Father David here. Here's your Christmas sermon. It's entitled, Love Itself is the Gift. Just the other day, a friend stopped by, and this person once had millions of dollars, a fine home in one of the richest sections on Oahu, a new Mercedes every other year, and more jewelry than some jewelry stores. And then through a series of bad luck, bad judgment, a bout with addiction and unforeseen illnesses, this friend came to see me from the houseless shelter that is now her home. Having lost everything, she's coming to believe that life is more than the material stuff she used to worship, and is wondering what new lessons life has in store for her. Letting go of everything, willingly or unwillingly, is what brings us to Christmas. Now, I grant you, thinking about letting go of everything on a time like Christmas is ironic, since so many of our days and nights leading up to this time have been about everything but letting go. These last weeks have seen many of us scrambling up and down the store aisles, having wrestled with our gift giving and meal planning and relative and friend airport picker-upping, so that many of us arrive at this time exhausted, flustered, and even a little uptight, hoping, I am sure, for that gold standard of a good sermon, one that has a strong opening, a strong closing, and as little as possible in between. And yet, letting go is exactly what God does in Jesus, the one in whom all things are held together. Letting go of it all because a helpless child born in a barn to an unwed teenage girl who, in the words of St. Paul, though he was rich, yet for our sake he became poor, so that by his poverty we might become rich. But the riches promised by God don't look anything like the riches lost by my friend. The riches of God are something like Della and James, who are newlyweds. They're madly in love, and they are as poor can be. When their first Christmas comes around, they have nothing for which to buy gifts for their beloved. But each has a prized possession. James has a golden pocket watch given to him by his grandfather, while Della has thick red hair that has grown down past her waist. And secretly, James sells his precious watch and buys Della a beautiful silver comb for her hair. And at the same time, Della secretly shaves off her hair and sells it so that she can buy a gold chain for James's watch. On Christmas Eve, the two stare at each other, baffled by the extravagant but now completely useless gifts they've given to each other. Their sacrifice, their letting go, is completely pointless, of course, unless love itself is the gift. It's like the story of Babette, a Frenchwoman, one of Paris's finest chefs, who loses everything in the political riots of 1870s France. Her restaurant, her family, her livelihood, it's all gone. And so she moves to Denmark, into the farming country, and she's taken in by a community headed up by two nuns, old women who've devoted their lives to God. When Babette arrives, the small community is old and falling apart with petty arguments. Babette tries to cheer them up, but it's no use. And one day a letter arrives. It seems Babette has won the Paris lottery, and the prize is 3 million francs. Babette decides immediately to treat her hosts to a proper parish dinner, and proceeds to buy the finest china and glassware. She imports an entire set of dining room furniture, along with the silverware and linen tablecloths, the most succulent meats, the finest cheese, and cases of ridiculously expensive French wine. The Danish peasants stare in amazement at the extravagant feast placed before them. And at first they're scared, even suspicious. But as the night goes on, the mood softens, and after a while, forgiveness and joy surround them all. Finally, kind of drunk, they all stumble out into the village square where they form a circle around the fountain, and they sing and dance together. After all these years, they have finally touched the wellspring, and their hearts are overflowing. Then someone says to Babette, "Well, I guess you'll be leaving us soon, won't you, now that you're a rich woman?" And Babette responds with a smile, "Rich? I'm not rich. I spent every penny I had on the banquet. 3,000,000 francs. Thanks to Cynthia Beaujolais for that wonderful set of stories. An extravagant waste? Perhaps, unless love itself is the gift. When we take a look at our world with starving children in the Sudan, a disparity of wealth in our country that might make Louis XVI blush, with a political divide so wide that some families can no longer sit down at a Christmas meal together, you might ask yourself if the event we come to celebrate this day, this miracle of God becoming a human being, is also nothing more than an extravagant waste. After all, what has changed in 2,000 years? There remain wars and rumors of wars, famine, hatred, pain. What did the incarnation, the miracle of God becoming a human being, accomplish? Perhaps it is this. You know the story of the prodigal son, I'm sure, the younger son who asks for his inheritance now while dear old dad is still alive, and who then heads off into the far country and blows it all. We often think that the father in that story represents God. But what if God is not the father in that story? What if God is in fact the prodigal son, the one who squanders himself for us, for our sake? What if the nature of God is to pour God's self out freely with abandon, regardless of the cost, regardless of the pain? What if my friend Father Bob Capon is right when he says that God is not our mother-in-law coming to see if her wedding present china is now chipped? What if God is more like a funny old uncle with a salami under one arm and a bottle of wine under the other, and we wait for him, not in fear and trembling, but only because it would be such a pity to miss the party? What if the poet is right when he exclaims that love is recklessness, not reason? Reason seeks a profit. Love comes on strong, consuming herself, unabashed, yet in the midst of suffering. Love proceeds like a millstone, hard-surfaced and straightforward. Having died to self-interest, she risks everything and asks for nothing. Love gambles away every gift that God bestows. What if we are called to be yeast, to be salt, to be light in this world that loves with abandon? And while our small efforts may not seem to make a bit of difference, what if, like the mustard seed, these small efforts will one day cover the earth? Let it go is only a whisper away from the words that brought all things into being. Let there be light, water, humanity. Let go of control, of anger, of resentments, of worry, of shame, of fear, of greed. Let go of everything, and the mystery of creation opens before you. This is the great insight of the Word becoming flesh. There is nothing to be renounced or resisted. Everything can be embraced as long as you cling to nothing. When you let it go, you go through life like a knife through a done cake, picking up nothing, clinging to nothing, sticking to nothing. And grounded in that fundamental innocence of your being, you can then be totally open, able to give it all back, even giving back life itself. That's what God is up to this day. That's the invitation offered to you at Christmas. So very simple. It only costs everything. So says my friend Cynthia Bourgelat one more time. And why is that? Because love itself is the gift. Merry Christmas.